Hello everyone, thank you so much for having me today.
Hi.
It's fantastic to be here. So yeah, 3D printing, very much the hype at the moment in the media. Everyone's latched onto it. Hopefully today I'll be able to give you a bit more in-depth on what 3D printing actually is, how you can get involved, and sort of maybe dispel some of the confusions that the media likes to focus on. How did I get involved in all this? I love making things. For years, like my dad's in IT, and he couldn't understand why I was just building things and making all sorts of mess in our house. We live in Bondi. So when I started to get into metalwork and angle grinding, welding, my neighbours didn't really appreciate it. So I looked for a way that I could make stuff, but quietly, and a little bit less mess. A few years ago, 3D printing really was backyard stuff or multi-millions of dollars in universities around the world. Back then it wasn't really accessible, but I was sort of latching onto the idea. And so during my industrial design degree, I actually decided to focus on 3D printing for my final year project. And what I did, instead of saying I was going to build a 3D printer for myself, I thought, how can I push this idea of 3D printing to a completely different area? And actually ended up making a prototype cake icing 3D printer, just because I could. This is the beautiful rendering of how it would look like in production, and I have a little video of how it actually turned out. So this is the first test. I did get it working a little bit better after that. But yeah, there's a lot of trial and error. What is 3D printing? 3D printing really is a bit of an umbrella term for almost hundreds of technologies now. But the main thing to understand is they all work in sort of the same way. They build up a shape layer by layer. So instead of traditional manufacturing where you start with a block of material and drill or cut into it, you actually make up something by adding thin layers on top of each other to build up a shape. So by doing that, you can pretty much make anything. You're not limited to shape restrictions that normal manufacturing would have. And there's less waste, because if you're making something from a block of material, all that excess material is wasted. But with 3D printing, you only use the material that goes into the part. So it's fantastic for one-off items, or actually mass customization, which is the idea of this one machine making lots of customized personal items one at a time. It's never going to really replace mass production because it's still really slow and quite expensive, but it is getting a bit closer. 3D printers all take a file format called STL, and it's a sort of, if you imagine a 3D mesh, so it's a computer format of like lots of little points, and the 3D printer will take this file, slice it up, and then the machine will print those slices. Actually, 3D printing, although the media's gone crazy for it recently, it's been around since about 1986. So the first technology was SLA, which was stereolithography, and that technology works with a giant bath of resin, so like a liquid plastic, and a laser will selectively harden that plastic in areas, and then the part slowly, literally grows out of this bath of liquid plastic. The machines that are currently being focused on at the moment, the low-end machines, use this technology called FDM, and it's almost like a hot glue gun, but on steroids, if you like. It's got a roll of plastic, like a filament, and then we'll melt that out line by line, and then build up a 3D part like that. And these machines are down to about $1,000 now, off the shelf, ready to run. One of the more recent developments is EBM, also SLS. So SLS is a powder machine which takes a powdered plastic and then uses a laser to harden that. And EBM is one of the sort of cutting edge technologies at the moment. It actually can create fully formed titanium parts or other metal alloys straight from the machine, and actually melts the titanium directly together with a laser. So what can be 3D printed? Basically anything, but I'll sort of narrow down. What it traditionally was used for was prototypes. So when I studied industrial design, we used 3D printing for a form study, which would be if we were designing a cordless drill or some sort of tool, we want to see how the handle would feel. So we'd 3D print that handle. But now it's getting cheaper. What we're finding is artists are starting to use 3D printing as a form of expression. So that bracelet in the middle, it's 3D printed, couldn't be possibly made in any other manufacturing technique. It's actually generated using a mathematical algorithm, and that would be almost impossible to make by hand. It would take a very long time. Architectural models have been 3D printed for quite a while, so you can actually produce full colour 3D prints on some technologies, and you can actually, instead of if you're doing some planning and you need a model to get approval, you can actually get this machine straight out of this print of building straight out of the printer, and then you're ready to go. It's actually being pushed even further now. People are starting to experiment printing actual buildings. Down the bottom corner, it's a warehouse with a giant machine that extrudes concrete. So there's no limit to what material you can 3D print with. People have come up with new experimental technologies all the time. And the titanium printing I mentioned, that's really getting everyone's attention now. So that's actually a jawbone, which was actually successfully implanted. So it's one of the first ever, fully formed for that patient and designed and then 3D printed. Just to see what might be on the horizon, people are now experimenting with 3D printing cells. I don't know much about this, it's crazy to me, but they've actually produced an ear with some electronic components in it that actually works. So they're actually pushing to 3D print body parts. It could be just on the horizon, I'm not sure. It might be the next breakthrough. So if you want to get involved with 3D printing, the first thing you need is a 3D file. And there's a lot of ways to go about it. At university, I learned SolidWorks, which is extremely difficult to learn. We spent 4 years studying it, and I still don't know everything. So that's really advanced. But because 3D printing is capturing everyone's attention now, there's more and more really simple design software coming out. So Tinkercad is actually a 3D design program that runs completely online. You don't even download it. So you can actually go to tinkercad.com and register. It's completely free. It doesn't run on Explorer, but it runs on other browsers. And you can 3D design in that. It's got lots of tutorials, and then you can easily print from that software. Another great program, which is a bit harder to use, is called Blender. That's also free, but that's got quite a learning curve. But you can actually produce really organic figurines and models. If you don't want to design from scratch on the computer, you can actually 3D scan. So 3D scanning, again, has been around since like the 1980s. But back then, the 3D scanners were more like $500,000. But now, you can actually use what's called the Xbox Kinect, which is actually a gaming console peripheral. So actually, it's a way to interact with your gaming console. When this first came out, released by Microsoft, the sort of community for 3D printing and scanning thought, actually, this is actually a 3D scanner. We're going to hack it and make it work for 3D scanning. Microsoft said, no, you don't, we're going to sue you. So someone had a bounty for the first person to actually reverse engineer the drivers to make this work for 3D scanning. And then Microsoft backed it and said, okay, we'll support you and give you drivers, etc. So the Kinect can do full body scanning. So these scans in the bottom have been done with the Kinect. It's not that great quality, but they're about $70 now. And the software to do that's free. So you can easily experiment with scanning people, sculptures, rooms, cars, anything around that size. And then once you have the 3D scan data, you can 3D print it. So actually that little figurine there, that's actually a 3D print. That's not a person. That's been 3D printed in full color. You can tell by the size, that's actually like the road there, so it's about that. It gets a little taste on 3D printing and 3D scanning and where it's all going. If you don't have a 3D printer, which I don't know how many people have them these days, but it's just growing all the time. I have 4. But you can use these online 3D printing services. So Shapeways has been around for quite a while now. They are the leading world 3D printing service. So you can go on there, they have lots of info on different materials they have. You can print in plastics, you can print in metals, you can get stainless steel, silver, all sorts of really exciting different materials, and they can give you a quote instantly online. iMaterialise is similar to Shapeways, a bit upper market. You can actually get titanium parts from iMaterialise. And then there's us. So 3D Printing Studio down the rocks, we can actually do 3D printing in-house. So we've got lots of different machines. And yeah, we're the first in Australia to do that in a retail setting.